Hello, everybody, and welcome to our James Beard Foundation Industry Support webinar, Your Voices Matter, Social Media for Social Good. I'm Ashley Koziak, and I'm an Impact Program Manager here at the James Beard Foundation, and I'm going to take you through a few technical points of the webinar and introduce our moderator and our panelists. So if you've been to one of our webinars before, this is all very familiar to you. This webinar is being recorded, and we'll send out a link to the recording after the program wraps. It'll also be available on our industry support webinar webpage, usually about 24 hours after we're done with the webinar. So tomorrow afternoon at some point, you'll be able to find a link to it online. We'll save the questions for the end. So, when we have about 10-15 minutes left, that's when we'll open it up for questions. But of course, at any time throughout the course of the webinar, you are welcome to submit your questions using that question icon that you see on the right side of your screen. It's like a little text bubble with a question mark in it. So submit those anytime, and we'll get to those at the end of the webinar. Finally, if you are having any technical issues, you can also use the question function or the chat function to go ahead and send those in to the organizers. So send those into the organizers, and my colleague Debbie or myself will do our best to help troubleshoot whatever issues you're having. Sometimes the easiest option is to log off and then log back in. That's usually a good fix, but we will do our best to help troubleshoot whatever issues you might come up against. All right, so we are going to start with a few introductions, and as this is about social media, as I introduce each of our panelists and our moderator, I'm going to share some of their social media posts with them. So first we have Angela Garbacz. She is the chef owner of Goldenrod Pastries in Lincoln, Nebraska, and the author of Perfectly Golden Adaptable Recipes for Sweet and Simple Treats. Called one of the most innovative women in food and drink by Food and Wine, Angela has been featured in Forbes, Martha Stewart Living, Cherry Bomb, Good Housekeeping, Food Republic, and other outlets. Clay Williams. Clay Williams began photographing food and drink for blogs, newspapers, and magazines in 2006. In the years since, he's hung off the back of food trucks in Paris, sweated out in tight kitchens with Michelin-starred chefs, and wandered through cattle farms with a team of butchers. He photographs assignments for the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the James Beard Foundation, and Imbibe magazine, among others. Clay has been a contributor to a number of travel books and cookbooks, most recently 111 Rooftops in New York that you must not miss by Leslie Adato. Clay is also the co-founder of Black Food Folks, a platform for Black professionals working in food, food service, and food media. The group has provided a space for members to meet, network, collaborate, and tell their stories. Chef Matt McClure. The Hive represents James Beard Award nominee and Arkansas native Chef Matthew McClure's take on the High South, his home state's distinct culinary identity, in dishes like sorghum roasted duck with hominy grits and a wood-fired hog chop with Ralston rice. McClure was born and raised in Little Rock, Arkansas, where hunting, fishing, and his grandmother's cooking ignited his passion for food. In 2012, he joined the opening team of The Hive, a James Beard Award semifinalist for Best Chef South category consecutively from 2014 to 2019. McClure is also an active member of the Southern Foodways Alliance and supporter of No Kid Hungry. Paola Velez is a James Beard Award nominated pastry chef who was born and raised in New York City and the Dominican Republic. She's become an advocate for equitably sourced food and sustainability. Velez uses her resources to help her communities and the restaurants she works with to make an impactful change. A graduate of Le Cordon Bleu in 2009 and co-founder of Donna Donna, a Latin American pop-up to benefit Ayuda DC, an organization that supports the restaurant industry undocumented workforce, as well as Bakers Against Racism, a worldwide bake sale that has raised over $1.9 million for organizations that support Black lives and Black communities globally. And so, since Paola has TikTok and we are able to embed some of those videos, I'm going to play a couple of Paola's TikToks right now before handing it over to the panel. right, thank you. And on to the panel. So I'm going to hand it over to Chef Angela to get this panel conversation started.
Thanks, Ashley and the James Beard Foundation. For a second, it's nice to feel like I'm with a group of people and with some people who are familiar to me. So this is really nice. So the last few webinars, we've talked about the Chef Bootcamp and the importance of chef voices being in advocacy, whether in Washington, D.C. or our own cities, or changing our industry and our organizations. We've also learned about how valuable storytelling is when trying to get our message across. It's an important tool for getting your message out on your social media platform, whether that's Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, or Facebook. And we've seen it increasingly, especially so much in the last several months, that these platforms are not just used for socializing, but they're used to get the word out on issues that are most important to us and our organizations. So today, we're really lucky to have a great group of folks to talk about using social media for advocacy. And we'll ask a few questions of each of them and then take some questions from attendees. So I'll briefly start with myself and tell you about my experience with the impact of storytelling for advocacy. So like Ashley was saying, I own Goldenrod Pastries in Lincoln, Nebraska. And, you know, I think that social media has been such a great opportunity for me to talk about different things that are really important to me. So Bakers Against Racism, which we were just talking about with Paola's introduction, this was a great way to connect with people across the country and take a stand when there was the majority of the Black Lives Matter protests at the beginning of the summer. And it was a really great way for us to be involved in something bigger than ourselves and to contribute to something that was bigger than ourselves. And the way that Bakers Against Racism was set up, it allowed for a lot of interactivity across the country and outside of the country, if I'm correct. And I started a campaign during Women's History Month about 3 years ago called Empower Through Flour, and it has gotten over 150 women in the food industry involved to raise money for different campaigns like Girl Up, so a way to find some equality for women around the world. So, you know, there are these bigger campaigns like Bakers Against Racism, Empower Through Flour, but on a daily basis, social media is such a great way for us to engage with the people who follow us and really take a stand and use our platforms to make a difference, whether that's in our community or outside of our community. So I'm going to pose this question to the whole panel. Do you remember when you first started using social media to advocate for causes you believed in? This can be for pure advocacy or using your work to push folks to think about issues or causes. When and why did that start for you? And Paola, we'll start with you.
Hi, can you hear me? Sorry.
Yep.
So for me, I think once I figured out what social media was, I use it as like a portfolio, right? I put all of my work on there, and actually that's what got me my first pastry chef job. I was like, please don't end this interview. Can you look at my Instagram? You know, how millennial, but we're here, you know. But I think that in finding that like tool as a vessel to kind of like express yourself, I was like, why am I not talking about things that matter the most to me, you know? So I wasn't afraid of kind of losing that branding or being marketable, because at the end of the day, if I'm not able to represent the causes that are the nearest to me, then I really don't want to partner or work with anybody anyways.
Clay, how about you? When do you remember first starting to engage in advocacy through your social media?
I'm sure that there were one-off points here or there, but really it was about, I guess, getting close to 2 years ago. Sort of the impetus for founding Black Food Folks with Colleen, and was this feeling that just feeling that I've become a little bit more established in the sort of food world, but also in my career, and that meant that I could really spend some time focusing on giving back in one way or the other. I've been shooting for the foundation for years now. I shot my first Chef's Boot Camp in, I want to say 2016, and so I've been hearing about the ways that well, you all can give back. And so I started to think about it more in a way of, well, what about me? I don't necessarily have, I don't have a restaurant, I don't have like the same platform, but as I started to realize that like people are actually paying attention a little bit to what I was posting and not just about like looking at pretty pictures of food, it sort of felt incumbent upon me to sort of use that platform a little bit more. So I'd always volunteered for a couple organizations, but I joined the board of the local slow food branch. I co-founded Black Food Folks. I have worked with a couple other groups, and so that was the first sort of momentum, and that was like within the last 2 years or so.
And that's such a big statement that you brought up of like realizing that people are interested in more than just like pretty food photos, and I think that like that's like that's a big step. I mean, for me, I can relate to that as well. And Chef Boot Camp was a great place for me as well to realize that we're called upon to do more than just talk about food. Matt, how about you?
I guess I've always sort of had this desire to want to, do more than just, or, sort of utilize my vocation more than just, making a dish or cooking for people that pay me to do it. I came up reading books like Fast Food Nation, and sort of had this real desire to want to bring light to the way people eat in the United States. And we hosted a boot camp in 2014, and so we started kind of learning how to weaponize our platforms. And but I think the one of the first you see what other chefs do, and you start to that kind of inspires you, whether it's cooking or whatever. And I remember seeing a John Currents, a chef in Mississippi, posting about this bathroom bill that was trying to be pushed through the Arkansas legislature. And like it was sort of slipping through the cracks with me, just I didn't hear about it. And I was like, man, this guy is like not even in this state, and and bringing awareness to it. So that kind of got me in this, like, we're gonna call these people out. We're gonna try to bring awareness. I mean, I think it's a very right-wing conservative legislature, both currently and at the time, and they were sort of unfettered with what they can do. But then sort of like post boot camp, that kind of back to the Fast Food Nation idea of trying to get everybody on board with eating good food is a big sort of passion of mine. And I've worked with organizations like No Kid Hungry, where feeding kids, I mean, I will say it's pretty bipartisan. Like, if you bring up the importance of feeding hungry kids and the reality of how impactful that can be to their trajectory, regardless of the neighborhood they grew up in, it's pretty incredible. And I think you get a lot of people on board, and that's sort of like leveraging this credibility as a chef, and to do something that is, you know, greater than yourself or greater than your career. And I find that's, you know, incredibly motivating for me.
Absolutely. Paola, we're going to talk to you a little bit about TikTok real quick, and I want to go back to what you were saying before. I think that's so cool. That's how you got your first job as a pastry chef, through social media. And I just want to thank you personally for all the work that you did with Bakers Against Racism. I was like, when I first saw it, I said, who is doing all this work? Who is behind this? And it was really incredible. So I was really honored to be a part of it. So TikTok is a newer platform, one that I have tried and not succeeded at, but it's been also in the news a lot lately. So can you tell us a little bit about how you got into it and how you decided this is going to be my mode of communication and it works for me and this is how I can share what I care about?
Okay, sorry. So I guess like for me, I was actually convinced by my staff, my team. They were like, you should go on TikTok. And at the beginning of the pandemic, they just kept texting me, oh, you should, you know, do TikTok. And I'm like, leave me alone. I also don't understand how to even use iMovie. So come on, you know. But they were like, oh, you should try to tell stories, because every day I would like tell them stories of like when I was like a line cook in New York, or you know, just growing up, and they would love to hear like the animation, like the animated stories that I kind of walked them through. And once I kind of like figured out how to make, I don't know, like 10-second sentiments on video, I was like, oh, I can be spicy with this one, you know. And sometimes I mean, on TikTok proper, I don't have a lot of followers and I don't have a lot of views, but when I translate it into Instagram stories or Instagram itself, which Instagram just reeled out.
There you go.
Just please cut me a check. No, I'm just kidding. So Instagram is now doing something similar to TikTok, where you can tell stories, right? You don't have to do this like continuous video. You can tell like, this is a bottle of water, and then you can open it, drink it, put it down, and be like, I'm hydrated. And that's using that for good is kind of like, you have to kind of think about what you have to say, what is going on in the world, you know. Like, I definitely didn't make any TikToks about Black Lives Matter or Bakers Against Racism, because I'm trying to be as respectful as possible to anybody who has lost a loved one or who has, you know, gone through any pain. Like, that's not a laughing matter. That's no joke, you know. For me, that's not a joke, you know. But when it comes to like coronavirus or, you know, stuff that we're like continuously stuck in now, which isn't a joke either, but I feel like as our industry kind of like, I don't want to say implodes, but goes downhill, it's good to talk about the things that hurt us, you know. And I found that there's a bigger community of people who were holding a lot of trauma and a lot of hurt, that they were able to kind of like assess their situation and move forward with TikTok. That's crazy to me, you know, but I think it's like a palatable way to talk about and express our feelings. We used to write diaries when I was a kid, and now I think TikTok is the same thing.
That was a great thesis on TikTok, and I think I might have to dive back in. But that's awesome. I might have to give it another shot. Clay, so can you talk a little bit about Black food folks and what role social media plays in your work and community? Specifically, we want to hear what works great on social with relation to Black food folks and what is challenging.
So when we founded Black Food Folks, it was really about getting people in the same physical space. It was the idea was to get people in the room who should know each other and connect them so that they could build together, right? They could collaborate. They could come up with new ideas. And the Instagram piece was sort of to support that. When we launched Black Food Folks last February, you know, Instagram part was a way of continuing the conversation by highlighting various people. It's basically like a forever follow Friday, right? Like it was just, hey, here's Paola. You know, she's at Kith and Kin at the time, and you know, pastry chef, and follow her, right? And it wasn't even like a full-on profile. It was just basically one of my photos, the person's name and their tag, and sort of a general like appreciation that that we're out here. One of the, just not to go too far off track, but one of the things that was the most moving for me about our first gathering for Black Food Folks was, you know, we're always a small percentage of the people in the room, whether it's events or at restaurants or in kitchens or whatever. And so it's it often makes us feel like there aren't that many of us, and getting us all together in one room when, you know, the initial idea was to get 30 people and it ended up being 100 people, was moving in a way that that was entirely unexpected. And so the whole point of putting them in our grid and the feed on Instagram was to show that, yes, you can scroll through and there are, you know, hundreds of us throughout, whether they be photographers or pastry chefs or event producers or what have you. So we had managed to get a following of, we broke 10,000 the week before the COVID lockdown hit New York. And that's when well, that's not exactly when, but like about a month later is when we decided to pivot to doing videos. Many videos in which, you know, folks like Paola are hosts. And we've done, I don't know, I've lost count, but it's over 100 talks. Paola has talked to folks in her community. She's talked to pastry chefs from around the country. We've got Therese Nelson, who is a chef and food historian, who has been hosting a talk on Afropunk for us called about the politics of food. And so that sort of change allowed us to, you know, I'm a stills person. I don't do video very much. It's not really my native area. But starting to have those conversations, it's not nearly as sort of complex in putting things together as like a TikTok. It's just, you know, it's just two people talking to each other. And, you know, I have ideas of trying to make that a little bit more, I don't want to say more interesting, but more diverse. But like, I think that's the thing that folks have really focused on, have really gotten interested in, because you can have these conversations. I mean, listening to Paola talk to Aisha Williams a couple weeks ago about, you know, about Dominican and Panamanian, you know, abuelas cooking, and how they managed to keep, you know, everything, the whole place, like when it's like 90 degrees and like 80% humidity or whatever, like it's all stuff I wouldn't even have thought about. But like, you know, it honors the people who came before us. It tells the story of what they're doing now. And so, I mean, that's all to say that like the video piece has been the thing that we've used the most, that we have used the most since this all happened. And I mean, you know, there are many reasons for this. Certainly the awakening or whatever back in June, but we are knocking on 40,000 followers just in the, you know, in the not quite 6 months since this all happened. So that's, you know, there are a lot of factors there, but those talks are definitely a big part of them. And I think those conversations have been super valuable.
And so much, I feel like, we've lost so much communication in so many ways of reaching people in the last about 6 months. And so, you know, if you're already using your platform for advocacy, you're already using it for storytelling. I feel like so much of it has grown, like Paola getting into TikTok and Clay starting to use more video. It's like all of a sudden this is the way that we reach people, and you know, we were reaching them there before, but it's just magnified.
Well, actually, just throw one more thing in. One of the things that we had always sort of struggled with was, you know, we're New York based, but we don't want to be about just New York, right? We want to be able to represent the community across the country. You know, when we talk about Black historic food and African American food and Black food being American food, you know, there's a lot to talk about with folks from the South or folks in the Midwest or, you know, or folks in the Caribbean or in Africa or wherever else. You know, when we were doing everything in person, you know, it was all very limited by geography, and that's not an issue anymore.
Absolutely. And I think one thing that I've seen that, you know, I think has been really impactful in our industry as well is, as restaurants are closing every day, you know, we have advocacy on so many different levels, and now we're just trying to save our industry. And we, you know, I feel like I scroll through social media, and this week it's just felt like the obituary section of the newspaper. And I think that I follow Chris Shepard down in Houston, and I thought it was so impactful on Instagram. He did his stories were just one after another. And, you know, it's awful to see and it's heartbreaking to see, but what a powerful thing. Like, we realize that it's our industry, but for all of his followers who aren't in the industry, as we're trying to pass legislation, what a powerful way for him to just have story after story after story of posting who's closing. And it's heartbreaking to see, but just another level of using social media for advocacy, and also another layer to it right now. So Matt, you are often using your social media channel to amplify important calls to action from organizations such as Share Our Strength or No Kid Hungry and the Independent Restaurant Coalition, which is kind of what we were just talking about. So why do you think it's important for chefs to be active and really getting the word out on these topics?
Yeah, so you know, it is kind of amazing what COVID-19 has done, you know, in terms of how we communicate. I have had, you know, we went from, you know, running a 3 service a day restaurant to, you know, I was a stay-at-home dad and husband for, you know, almost 3 months. And, you know, I think anybody with young kids know it is nonstop. I would much rather be cooking in a kitchen than, you know, being full on, you know, kind of single parent. So it's really, I mean, I think for me, it's been challenging. I think with all of this, you know, the awakening in June, the COVID-19 debacle, you know, the ongoing climate crisis, the fact that kids, you know, we were at like 1 in 4 kids struggle with hunger before the pandemic, and now we're like at 1 in 7. And you know, like, I mean, I felt absolutely powerless because you know, prior, I felt like I had some sort of way to help, you know, push back. And, you know, then I have, you know, and then I'm unemployed and I have no bandwidth for anything. And you know, taking pretty pictures of food just seems very trivial with these real things happening. Independent Restaurant Coalition, you know, started getting organized right before the shutdown happened. You know, a lot more organized now. And that's, you know, all of these things that, you know, the restaurant I work for isn't a small independent restaurant. You know, but I find it important for, you know, for groups like that they need to stay. We need those mom and pops. We need those, you know, those are the kind of kitchens that I came up in. And I don't think I would be, you know, ready for my job today had I not had that experience. So posting pretty pictures of food. I mean, I think that is fun when everything is like, you know, normal. I don't know what normal is anymore, but it just doesn't feel like that is, you know, not even appropriate right now. I mean, I think that, you know, bringing awareness to all these crises is, to me, that's the front burner. That is what, you know, what we need to be focused on. You know, we need to address these things before we can, you know, get back to whatever the new normal is going to be. Yeah, I use Instagram that's linked to Facebook, that's linked to Twitter. I mean, it makes it pretty easy for a guy like me that was born right before millennial, you know, the decades happened. So I'm sort of like mildly tech savvy, but mostly not. And, you know, so like TikTok is like way beyond me. But I think it is aware, you know, you build this credibility as a chef. People, you know, get used to listening to you when you talk about food and, or, you know, where you're sourcing or which farmers or your activation in the community. And I think those are, you know, those are all, for me, my personal requirements for being a chef is engaging with the community, you know, both locally and nationally. And, you know, but I can say the community of chefs that I, you know, feel like I'm with believe, you know, very similar things, care about very similar things. So it makes it easy to feel, you know, comfortable posting things that maybe, you know, I don't know if controversial is the right, but you know, they may be a little bit uncomfortable, and you know, I think we just, that's where we're at right now, and we need to get used to being a little bit more uncomfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a couple more questions to get to before we launch into attendee questions. So I'll pose this to the whole panel. When you think of all the different platforms that we have access to, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, which do you think, and this could be personally or just your impressions on our industry as a whole, which provides the best avenue for advocacy? And especially, you know, in your industry specifically, whether you're a chef, photographer, what do you think is working best? And anyone can chime in on this.
You know, I found, like, so we, you know, the restaurant hotel I work for, we, you know, we have these people that break down metrics of engagements. And like a year or two ago, I saw this, this, you know, bit of information, and, you know, it broke down our level of engagement from Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I think those were the main ones. And by far and away, the most engagement that we got was through Facebook. And I, you know, and so I found that before I wanted to just like shut Facebook down and never look at it again. But like, man, the reality is most people are on it. And that is, you know, so, and that's for a, you know, a business sense. I don't know, you know, if this would apply across the board, but I mean, like a lot of people are there. There's no doubt.
So I guess it depends on what your content you're trying to push forward, right? Content creation and the specific app that you release it on makes all the difference, right? For Facebook, if you're going to share videos, informative videos especially, it's the easiest app to share and get your content across multiple people within a very, very fast rate. You can go viral in seconds on Facebook if you do it right. Instagram is all witty snippets, you know, it's like the cliff notes of social media. And Instagram is really, you're trying to tell a story with your pictures. You are really captivating people. It's the picture book of social media. You don't have to write a really long caption to explain your point. If your picture is impactful enough or, beautiful enough, people will like it without even knowing what it's about. So that's where you have to like catch people's attention. TikTok is, I don't know, it's different. There's actually, that algorithm is crazy. There's no way to figure out what works there. One day you can be on, Baker's TikTok, and then the next day you are a Native American TikTok, and you're just like, this is awesome. This is so much content. I don't know what I'm watching, but yay. So I guess once we figure out, I'm the millennial, Gen Zers got it in the bag. Like they know exactly what to do with YouTube, Instagram, whatever, but TikTok is a beast within itself. So I think it's very helpful that now it's in a we have something similar in a platform that is a little more intuitive to us, which is Instagram. But I do, if anybody is trying to like get their message across, use all facets of, especially Instagram, Facebook, that combination. Link your accounts, share IGTV, do reels, post stories, post on your feed, and the algorithm will reward you. It will be like, good job, you did that. And all of a sudden your content will spread further than it needs to, or you want it to. Like Bakers Against Racism started within 4 hours. I was trending, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Help. I was like, help me, anybody, people who know social media, get on the phone with me right now. So if you kind of like play by social media rules, those rules will help you. Oh, and hashtags. Learn how to hashtag, guys. It's crazy. It's annoying, but it's really important. Anyways, sorry.
So I'm not so good at these things as at least as I used to be. I over time have sort of carved out Facebook and Twitter from my most of my everyday life. I still end up going down the rabbit hole on Twitter from time to time, and I usually end up feeling worse than I did before. So Instagram, I mean, I'm a photographer, and I cover the food world, and Instagram is where all the photographers are. It's where all the chefs are. So it's been the world personally where I've ended up making the most connections and feeling the most connected. And sort of because of that, Instagram has been the place where Black food folks has been the most sort of active. We are on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're not on TikTok. Colleen and I are both solidly Gen Xers, and I have said TikTok is where I draw the line. That's the over this age, you should just not bother. I don't think it's gonna work. So unless Paola, unless you want to help us out and help us with the Black food folks TikTok account.
Well, let's. I think it'll be, worthwhile. You could do, instead of doing videos for yourself, you can get cooks and bakers to do snippets of their recipes. And that's a wonderful way. I feel like you guys would trend faster than my TikTok would ever trend with that kind of content. So let's
really
talk.
Good at what you do. So I don't know, but yeah, let's talk. But
yeah, for sure.
For me, it's been all about Instagram, and I know we need to expand and spend more time on Facebook because it's true, it is where everybody is. And Twitter. What's interesting is that it is the different communities that are on different platforms. Most of what I'm concerned about is sort of insidery stuff. So I want to talk to people who are working with Black food folks. I want to be talking to people who are working in the industry one way or the in one part of the industry or not. But you know, food writers are all on Twitter, and usually pissed off about something, and it's hard to even keep track of what people are pissed off about on any given day. I usually end up spending the first 10 minutes on Twitter trying to find out what people are talking about. And so, you know, we have somebody who's been helping us with social media, and part of that has been keeping track of what's going on and being able to at least follow the conversations and do the retweets or supporting or whatever as needed. So I mean, the idea of like the idea is that we should probably be using all of them as much as possible, but there's certain areas where I just end up being more comfortable than others.
So there's a couple last questions that I feel like go together a little bit. And so the question of how do I get into advocacy on social media, the general how do I get into advocacy on social media but I don't want my social media to be perceived as too political. And Paola, you talked about that a little bit to begin with, and I think we share similar sentiments on that. And also, how has this changed? And we've talked a little bit about this, how much social media and advocacy has changed in the last 6 months for all of us. And so, Paola, I would love for you to kind of reiterate what you were saying at the beginning about, like, if you're talking to somebody who's like, well, I really want to start using my social media, my business social media as a platform, but what if it is then seen as too political?
I think that's the risk that you're willing to take, right? Like, if you really think that it's super important to you, you have to decide what's best for you and your business. So at the beginning of Bakers Against Racism, there was an Australian baker who reached out to me. It was funny because we would connect, and it was like I would wait until like it was late at night to talk to her because she was really stressed. You know, she's like, I want to bake for Indigenous lives in Australia, but I think I'm gonna lose business, you know. And I was like, well, I mean, if the people that leave your business, if they stop giving you their, you know, money, then they weren't supporting you to begin with, because they should support all of you, all facets of you. And we should be adults enough that if I don't agree with you, but I think your product is great, you know, I could put certain things aside, you know, like I'm not going to go, you know, over to, I don't know, Clay and be like, hey, I don't agree with what you're doing. I'm not going to do Black food folks anymore. It'd be childish. You know, we have to really separate the realm of our reality, right? Like what we perceive as reality and how social media affects our day-to-day lives. But if you are going to advocate, you know, start off slow, you know, just retweet something, post something, you know, host a bake sale. That's what I do. You know, I do talk a lot about other stuff now, but that's because I'm a lot more confident. And literally, I felt like the worst thing that could have ever happened to me was that I could lose my job, and I did, you know. And so I was like, what do I have to lose? Retweet, you know. I was like, whatever, everything's gonna be, it's gonna be out in the open because I don't have anything to lose, you know. But at the end of the day, I feel like so with that baker in Australia, she did lose a bunch of followers. And as she continued to bake, she was like, well, I'm just going to buckle down. If you said that we have to stand for what we believe in, then let's stand for what we believe in. And then within a few weeks, her followers tripled and her business was thriving,
Wow.
you know? So it's one of those things where she was afraid to do it at first because she was so worried about the repercussions. And then it turned out to be a greater reward because other people were like, you know, actually, I agree with what you're saying. I do want to stand for Black lives and Indigenous lives, you know, so here are my dollars because I support you. You know, what you're doing is brave, and I wish I could do it too. So I don't know. It's all a risk. Everything is a risk, and you have to assess whether or not the reward is worth it.
Absolutely. I think that's really well said. And what's the worst that could happen? That's like identifying what that worst case scenario is and realizing it's not that bad. I think being in Nebraska in the Midwest, you know, it kind of is a more conservative place. And we started out small, like you suggested. I mean, started out small in 2015 and kept posting and reposting. And what I found is that there's so many people in this area, in this community, who just wanted somebody to take that first step. And I think that, you know, you can be that person in your community who's the one who has that, who's willing to take that first step and stand up for what you believe in. Matt and Clay, I don't know if you want to touch on that a little bit or talk about how this has changed for you. I know we've talked about this off and on over the last 45 minutes about how social media and advocacy has really, really changed since COVID hit. But if there's anything else you wanted to add, or about, you know, taking the step to really use your platforms for change.
I don't really think that, like, I still don't consider myself to be particularly political on my social media, or, well, no, my Twitter is entirely political, but on Instagram, Paola's seen my feed. It's terrible. It's full of vitriol, which is all that Twitter is good for. But to me, Instagram has always been like the respite, like it's the place I go so I don't have to think about those things. So I don't consider my feed to be particularly political. I don't even really think Black Food Folks is particularly political, because I don't consider recognizing humanity and equal rights to be a political issue. You know, I haven't, you know, I rarely post about protests or about like particularly like electoral things. You know, I don't do most of those things, and so I don't really think of it as a political thing. But yeah, I mean, certainly when we're talking about, you know, recognizing history, recognizing humanity, recognizing equality, and like I feel like that's not even a statement. It's just like that's the fact, right? So I don't necessarily think of myself as going out of my way to do any of those things. And I follow very many people who are much more active in those ways than I am. I think it's just a matter of, like, I think I'm authentically who I am on those spaces, and that will include, you know, some recognition of politics and the state of things. But, you know, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Yeah, I have on Facebook. I have you know, I have like a public Facebook page. You know, it's kind of like the Chef Matt McClure, and you know, I think I keep it a little bit cleaner. You know, it's really about food or you know what's going on at the restaurant, or you know, it's, you know, not like totally sanitized. I mean, I think, you know, no get hungry stuff, or you know, if there's like things that I'm doing. You know, then I got my personal that, you know, I'm a little bit more open with, you know, I think, you know, like you, Angela, I'm in a conservative state, in a conservative county, and I, you know, don't consider myself conservative. And so, you know, I feel like it's important for me to just, you know, I think, you know, maybe it's a perception of people from Arkansas, you know, you know, I don't know what, you know, the panel would think the typical Arkansan is. But, you know, I think I would like to, you know, say, you know, at least like post up that not everybody here is like that. And, you know, some people are more open-minded than others. And, you know, maybe some stereotypes are true, but, you know, not all of them are. And so I'm a little bit more, you know, probably aggressive. You know, my dad told me a few months ago that I should avoid using the word fuck in social media. And I was like, but Dad, you know, sometimes that is the way I feel. So, so yeah, I mean, I think it's whatever your comfort level is, but I think it's important to, you know, as Paolo said, you know, I think it's a leap worth taking.
You know, one of the first things that came up at the Chef's Boot Camp with James Beard Foundation a little over a year ago, when I was there, they said your guests, and you know, maybe we can extend that to our followers, our constituents, and what are the messages that you're getting across to them, and so as businesses, as people who are, you know, running our certain sect of the industry, how are we, whether it's political or not, how are we telling the stories of the people and the communities that we feel are important? Like No Kid Hungry, to me, Black food folks, this is not political. This is important stories that need to be told, like you were saying, Clay. And I think that's a really important distinction to make. Ashley, I'm not sure if you're on, if you have questions from the audience that you wanted to get into.
We do. So we have questions, and we have two really good ones that I'm gonna, you know, in our time that we have remaining, I'd love to be able to at least get to these two, because it's stuff that I've heard a lot from some of the chefs who are in our current virtual bootcamp program. So the first one I'm going to direct to Paola, and then if anyone else wants to weigh in, you're certainly welcome to. So it's essentially videos versus static content versus pictures, you know, especially on Instagram, because I think videos can be very powerful, but if you're the one making them, you can also feel a little extra vulnerable when you're making them. So how do you parse that out in your mind? And what are your thoughts on that?
I'm actually so I'm stuck within a video void right now because I'm building content. So it's actually a lot of like Reels and IGTV, and also I finally caved and people can see me make recipes at home now. You know, I avoided it for 5 months, but I think it really depends on your audience. As long as you are authentic and true to self, you know, doesn't matter what you post, you know, as long as people feel that it's genuine, right? If it's fake and phony, people are gonna be like, okay, that's maybe a nice picture, like, oh, I'm jealous that you're in Cabo and I'm stuck, you know, quarantining at home. But if it's, you know, I don't know, not authentic, if it's not telling a real story, if it's not engaging, then people aren't going to care. It doesn't matter. But if you are going to build a feed, I'm not really good at this, but I guess my Bakers Against Racism account really is, right? It's I have videos, and then I post 2 or 3 static posts, and then I post another GIF or video, so that people don't see the same content. But again, my followers on Small Orchids, they are like videos, and they're like chasing me down the street virtually, and I'm so stressed, so tired. But you know, I give them what they want. But yeah, I think it really depends. Don't oversaturate. If something is not working, move on. Don't try to make it work, you know. Also, try to do things that aren't trending, you know, like if you see something that's like hyper trending, yeah, you can jump on the bandwagon, but all other like 8 million people that are doing it too are going to do it. So that means that your content isn't going to be seen, which is what brings me back to hashtags. It's really important that you carve out a hashtag for yourself. You know, something that is engaging, that if your followers are like, I wonder what hashtag Black food folks is doing right now, you could go and like bring it up, you know, and make sure that when you're hashtagging, it's relevant to your post. You know, if you have a block of hashtags that you copy and paste, don't do that. I just got out of being shadow banned, so don't do that. But yeah, I mean, it's like everything that we do. Like if we were to make a recipe at home or at work, you would practice. So this is the same thing. Practice makes perfect with this stuff, you know, look up what to do, what fits your aesthetic. And I know it sounds so like cliched, what fits your aesthetic, but figure it out, and then be consistent, you know, so that your followers know exactly what they're going to get when they look at your page.
Thank you. Does anybody, we have some more questions. Does anybody else wanna add anything, or? All right, so we'll move on to another question. And I think, and I'm going to start with Clay with this one, but again, I think that with, you know, Empower Through Flour, Bakers Against Racism, or, you know, Share Our Strength, No Kid Hungry, I think, you know, if any of you want to kind of respond after that. It seems like one aspect of social media is also not just about, you know, getting your word out there, but also it's about building a community to come with you. And I feel like Black Food Folks has done an amazing job of building that community. So Clay, I'd love to get your thoughts on that, you know, what that process was like and why is building community, it seems so important to you, and you do it so well.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of what we always were, and we did a couple things from the start. We had a newsletter, which a private newsletter that, you know, informed folks in the community about what's going on, what personal news is happening, who's at what job, who's got this thing published, that sort of thing. So we had done that from the beginning. Since we started doing the talks over the last few months, it's been even more so of a way to form community, because people are really engaging in the chats. So during the talks, you know, we've got, you know, I think one of the most important things that we did was make it not about me and Colleen. It's about Paola, it's about Cicely, it's about MJ, it's about like this group of hosts, the group of people who have been in the community, and folks get to know them, they get to know their guests. You know, Areta Itar is the sous chef at Gramercy Tavern. She hadn't done much of this sort of thing before, and she's been an amazing host, and she's had some insightful questions, and you know, from or with a lot of conversations with a lot of different people throughout the field. And, you know, people see when she's going to be on, or when Paola is going to be on, or when someone else is going to be on. Like we mostly do our things in the afternoon, but Cicely and MJ, Mavis J, who is a boot camp alum, you know, they've got kids, and so they said they wanted to do something in the evening, and so they've got something at 7 p.m. every Monday where they may or may not talk to anybody but each other and whoever's on the chat. And so, you know, and they are regularly one of the most watched, because people are engaging with people. And you know, even though it doesn't necessarily save in the IGTV after the fact, people who are on live are really following along and talking to them.
I think that what you said is so important about making sure that it's not about you. And, you know, we're getting to the point when we were reopening my stores where it felt very, very chaotic, very scary. You know, we've had shut down for a really long time, and I was trying to remember what made the business successful to begin with, which sounds kind of dark, but and so much of outside of just advocacy, but so much of using social media is about forming a community and making it authentically. And I know that's a buzzword, but really what matters to people, and it's not what matters to me. And I think that trying to remember that and going back to the roots of like what made my business something that felt good to people. And that's the same now in COVID as it was in 2015 when times were pretty good. And that is creating community and creating experiences for people. And to be able to use social media to help kind of rebuild my business has been really, really important. And like Paola was saying as well, you have to create content create content that feels very true to who you are. And so when we were starting to shut down, for example, and reopening, I thought it was really important that people understood what that means. So the reopening process for a restaurant is hugely expensive and it's hugely time consuming. And, we were able to kind of start reopening in May and June, but what did that mean? How long would you be open? How many, tens of thousands of dollars at least are you pouring into reopening when you don't really know what's on the other side of that? And so being able to use social media to share that information and not necessarily being doom and gloom, but letting people know, like just popping on for an IGTV and explaining the process, I think is really important. As people see the pictures, the screens popping up from Independent Restaurant Coalition, that's all really great information. But I think it's important for people to hear your individual experience. You see a business, I've been really lucky to be successful the whole time that I've been in business, and a lot of people perceive that. But for them to hear what is actually happening in the industry and what it actually means to reopen a restaurant has been really eye-opening for a lot of people. But if I was like today, maybe I wanted to jump on and do something like that again. Well, I'm not really feeling it today, but I'm not going to jump on and tell a story that doesn't feel authentic to the community because they can tell. So I think really investing and being honest with the people that you're communicating with is always important.
Muted. We're all playing that mute unmute game. So we are a few minutes over, but Matt, Paola, anything to add? Any final words from anybody before we sign off? Any final pieces of advice for the chefs and culinary community that's tuning in?
No, I mean, I would probably just like back up what Clay and Angela said. I mean, I think being honest, I've always found anytime that it's a story or it's my sort of like personal connection, when we were closing the restaurant to when we were opening it to, we're opening it during these conditions. I mean, I think it is more, there's more texture there than just, kind of a generic photograph of and it's my generic, and I mean, Clay's generic. I'm not a great photographer when it comes to food, but I do think that like that is kind of the great thing with social media, especially now. It's how we are really connecting, and yeah, being honest. And I don't post right now. I'm just not posting all the content because I just don't, like sometimes I don't have anything nice to say, so I'm not going to say anything. And then but also like it's just yeah, it's got to be real.
Sorry, I'm trying to unmute myself. I was like, so I guess I would end with, for some of us, food is political. We have no choice. This is our reality. So if some people don't want to use food as a vessel to activate, that's okay, but that's also privilege, if you are going to do Instagram, social media, and you have a business and you don't think it's interesting, you should do it. It could be the difference that keeps your business afloat. If people know that you're there and people know what you are cooking, maybe they'll order more. Also, you don't need to have like fancy equipment like Clay. I have an iPhone, and I do all of my editing, everything through that. Maybe I should invest in a computer, but maybe not. I don't know. So don't feel kind of obligated or weighed down by technology. You just need a phone that you use regularly every day. So that's it.
Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. Thank you, Paola Velez, Angela Garbacz, Clay Williams, and Matthew McClure. And thank you, everyone who joined in the audience. Will I see you all on Snapchat? Is that still like a thing? I remember when someone tried to teach me how to use Snapchat like years ago. I don't think it's still a thing. Anyway, well, you have more industry support webinars coming next week. They are Tuesdays and Thursdays. Next Thursday at 2 p.m., we're going to be talking about how you have conversations with members of Congress and your congressional staffers. We're really excited. Chef Tiffany Derry is going to be moderating that, and we have a couple of congressional staffers who will be joining us. Patty Ross from Speaker Pelosi's office and Robert Murray from Wicker's office, Senator Wicker's office. So we're really excited to be joined by those folks. And of course, as I said at the top, a recording of this webinar will be available online. Just give us a little bit of time to get it up on our industry support webinar site. And thank you again. We hope to see you next week.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.